All right, welcome back. We are WEBD6201. That's client-side scripting at Durham College in the winter 2022 semester, and it's week 3, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. Where last we left off in this story of JavaScript is we talked about what the heck is ECMAScript? What is that thing? We talked about that on Wednesday. And we said that ECMAScript is basically kind of the foundation or a standard, a body of standards for JavaScript, and it improves or pushes forward the API year over year. That's what it does. We also described what ECMAScript 6 is compared to ECMAScript 5. We discussed object-oriented programming methodologies for JavaScript specifically. We said that JavaScript is actually a prototypal inheritance language compared to a classical inheritance language like C# or C++ or Java. Okay, so it's a little bit different on the back end. And what we're going to do, we also split code, between files. We also talked about how when we split code and we put code inside of a file, and this is protected by an IFI, then the class, in this case, our contact class, is in the global namespace, and we're going to fix that next week. For this week, what we're going to do is we're going to continue using the contact class we made from last day, and we're going to make a contact list. And I'm really excited to do this with you because this is going to be the first real, I would say, application that we're making with JavaScript and the stuff we've learned. So let's move on, and without further ado, let's move into this next part. But one more thing I have to mention is that this week as well, test 1 is something that's been released on Monday, and it's due tomorrow on Saturday at midnight. And there's quite a few of you that still have not attempted test 1. Please do so. You get 2 attempts. It's worth 7.5% of your final grade. So that's like half a lab. Please, there is no missing a test. You can't just only do 3 tests out of 4 or anything like that. You need to do all of them. You need to do all your labs. And so this is worth a big chunk. Please, if you haven't had a chance to do it now. I will send a reminder tomorrow if I notice that people haven't done it. All right, so that's what I'm doing there. All right, so let's go back to VS Code. And in VS Code, all I've done is I've taken our in-class exercise from last day and dragged and dropped it in. We don't need a couple of things. One thing we don't need is this little test code we have at the bottom and all these comments. These were for you. So let's get rid of all this stuff because we don't need it right now. Awesome. And let's save the page. The other thing we want to do is in my index.html, we had a contact.js, and we were using that for testing, but we're not going to use the contact class in our index.html. So let's move that out of there. Let's cut it out. And let's put it instead inside of my contact page, contact.html. We're going to be working with the contact.html page today, and we're going to create a form for that. And we'll put it at the bottom of the contact page. All right, so contact.html. So we're also going to put a scripts contact.js reference down here so we can use our contact class in our contact page. Hey. Okay, that's fantastic. That's great. Let's also change the name of our container from a div to a main, which makes more sense, right? Because it's more contextual. And it says contact us. Awesome. What I want to do is I want to install a form. Okay, I want to install a form. And I know you guys covered forms in your HTML and CSS course, but we're going to do it again here. Samuel says, I was told resubmit my says SharePoint file. Yeah, I opened it up, Samuel. It should be open. It should be available until tonight at midnight. So you can resubmit online at DC Connect. Yeah. So one thing, guys, SharePoint files. That means like stuff on on Teams. If you share a a file with me on Teams, I will not have access to it. Teams somehow and me do not get along with Durham for whatever reason. Durham and Ontario Tech they messed that up. So it is what it is. Anyway, let's move on. So that's the first thing. So I want to add a form, and let's use Bootstrap a little bit to learn about forms again. So, and when I mean that, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it in a good way, right? Because we haven't done perhaps potentially forms in a while. So getbootstrap.com. If you go there, it has some examples of form data. If you go on the left, you see that there is forms right here. And if I go to overview, that's where I want you to start looking. So go look there first. Okay. And I'll put the same thing on YouTube. Right, so start with that, please. So, okay, awesome. That's great that you guys are there. So that's the first thing. And under forms, notice that there is some example code that they made this very simple form. And they have a lot of different things here. They have form controls. They have selectors. What does a selector do? It's like a drop down, checkboxes and radio buttons. What do they look like? Ranges, which are like, sliders, input groups. I'm going to make our form, I want to make it look more like this. Floating labels, where you have a label that kind of floats in the middle. Different kinds of layouts for the form, as well as validation for how to do basic validation with forms and using HTML5. Yay, that's a lot of information. But what we need, if I go back to overview, is I want to start with the basic form, this one right here, which is in the overview link. So I'm going to copy this form. And what I want to do before we go and start messing with the form is I want to start formatting our HTML a little bit. So again, I'm modifying the HTML right here. So in the underneath contact us, I'm going to put a div tag. Oh, there's something else we're going to be covering this day. We're going to need more Emmet. So we're going to learn more Emmet. It's probably just you. I think everyone else can hear Tyler. If you go to the div tag, if you put a div tag in, div, and I want to put a class of row, a class of justify dash content large center, and a class of G3, that's gutter 3. Okay, follow me here. Inside of that, I want to put the form, right? That's what I want to do. And so if I go gutter 3 and then press tab, then I have that div tag. So this is the div tag where I want to justify my content inside there. Let's paste the form that I got from Bootstrap. So I got something that looks like this. I'm going to copy this code and put it inside of your chat, guys. So there's the code that I want you to put inside of the contact.html form just to start. Remember that at the bottom we added a contact.js file. This is critical for us to make it work. All right, so this is cool. What does this look like? Let's do a light server to figure it out, light-server. And when we go there, we're going to see this file, and we can see that in the contact page, we see this ugly form. And this is okay, but I mean, it's really large, and we can modify this with some code. So going back to VS Code, right? What we want to do is add some information to the form object itself. Right, so in the form object, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start typing a new class, and the class is going to be equal to column large 6, column medium 10, column small 10. Okay, so what this means is I want to allocate 6 columns for the form. Bootstrap allows us to have a 12-column grid. Each column, if there's 12 columns and there's 100% for the entire screen width, that means each column is approximately 8%. If I have 6 columns, that's around 50% of my width. It is 50% of my width. And I'm going to have another 50% that I can allocate somewhere else. So that's where I start. Okay, so if I did this, if I save it and I go back to this, now you're going to see it's only 50% of the width of my page. It's not too high, too crazy. Let's go back. And we have some stuff in here that doesn't make any sense. Let me talk about those things. So we have a couple things. We have an email address and we have a password, right? And we have a checkbox. We're going to use the checkbox. We're going to use the email address, but the password, it doesn't make sense because if I look back over here and I start typing password, I get this. I'm not doing a login system right now, so I don't need this password. Let's get rid of it. So from the div tag here, goodbye password. Let's configure. Oh, I removed the wrong thing. Goodbye password. Let's configure my email address so it complies with the way I want it to look. right? So I want to change this from a simple form input to an input group. I talked about how I want this to look. So let's put input group as a class. We don't need a label, but rather let's change the label to a span and get rid of all the attributes inside the label itself. Goodbye. So it looks like this. We want to add a class to the label, and the class is going to be input-group-text. That's what's going to be in there. That's the span that we're going to use. Again, this is just styling right now. In my input, I have a lot of detail, and I also have this extra div tag that I'm going to remove. Goodbye div tag. So now I have a very simple some simple information. One, my type is email. Type means the keyboard that's going to appear on your mobile device when you're using this form. So if an email comes up, the email keyboard is going to come up, which is a subset of a regular keyboard. It makes it easier for you to type an email. That's what it does. All right, so we have a class. That's nice. I want to move my class and my ID around. So ID I want to make first every single time for these things. And let's change the ID to what it should be. Email address, right? And my type is email. My class can stay where it is. I like that. But I want to put something new, which is called the name attribute. And my name attribute is going to be email address. So does anyone remember what name is compared to ID? Anybody? Meanwhile, while you guys are thinking what that is, I will continue working on my aria described by, which should just be something like full email address input, email address input. And it's so long that I want to split across different lines here. I'm just going to go enter, and let's keep talking. So what do you think is the name attribute? Why do we have a name attribute in this element? What is it for?
I think two in the form of sent versus offensive and code, just what the idea is.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Okay, so then we want to also add in our aria label. I'm putting it here. And we're going to have the aria label, which again is for screen readers, for usability for screen readers. This is going to be email address. Okay. And at the end, we're also going to put in something that says required, because this is a form field that we must have in order for us to have everything we need in our contact list. Yay, that's our first one, email address. And if I press save and go back, then it looks like this. Okay, and let's make sure it says email address, like so. And I want to copy this a couple times. So copy and paste it twice. Paste, paste. And I want to change the first iteration of my email address to full name. We're going to change everything that's related to it. So it should say full name, as well as this should say full name. Instead of an email type, it's going to be a text type, because this in the mobile device will pull up regular text. This shouldn't say email address, but rather full name. So full name, aria label. And my aria described by is full name input. Save. And then let's do the next one, which is going to be my contact number. Contact number. And my contact number, I'm going to do it in a different order. I'm going to do this one, put that in here. I want to change that here so I don't forget that. Change my email address to contact number and copy paste that from here to there. Change the type. Instead of email, it's going to be tel for telephone type. So when you're using a mobile keyboard, it's going to use a telephone type when it comes up so you can access it there. Right. So again, there's multiple keyboards that are available on mobile, and this is just one of them. Okay, save. And let's see what this looks like up online. So if I go back, this is my form. Right. Pretty straightforward. Let's continue with this stuff. And I want to add a message box for the message. And again, we can get that from Get Bootstrap. So on Bootstrap, notice that there was a input group. And on input group, there's this text area right here on Bootstrap. And I want you guys to use this text area to start. So this one here, I'm going to copy it and put it in your chat so you can see what it looks like. I want you to start with that. And that's going to go underneath. That's going to go underneath everything, but on top of the checkbox. So before the checkbox, but below email address, this is where this input group is going to go. Again, I want to use margin bottom 3 just to space everything out the exact same way. And what I want to do here is it's going to have your message instead of the text area. So your message. And it says input group text. That is the message in the span. And then the text area, the ID, we'll put the ID first. The ID is going to be message, and so will the name. Okay. The form control is going to remain. And then ARIA label is going to be message area. Message area. Okay, that's what the final form is going to be for that one. If I save, and if I go back, now you'll see this. Full name, contact number, email address, your message. Good. For the last one, I can certainly make this an input group as well, but I don't think it's going to stand out enough. So the input group, what it looks like for a checkbox is something that looks like this, and I'd rather have the checkbox look slightly different, so that's why I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it as is. And again, for the checkbox, it's going to be a form check, margin bottom 3. Doesn't matter how this is organized. The type is a checkbox. The class is a form check input. I need an ID, right? Let's take that ID. Put it here. Again, we always organize ourselves slightly different. And this will be the subscribe checkbox. This is critical for us today. As well as I need a name, right? So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to copy it again, paste it, and just change ID to name. Okay, the name is going to be the same. And underneath the checkbox where it says form check label and the for attribute should be the same as the ID. And instead of check me out, we want to say something like subscribe to our contact list, right? If I press save and I go back to the page, then we'll see this, subscribe to our contact list. Finally, the buttons. I have a button and the type is submit, but we don't have any kind of ID. We need to hook into it with an ID. We're going to call this the send button. As an example, the type is submit. The class is button primary, right, which is the blue button. Okay, that's what it is. I want to inject an I tag, which is the font awesome, and we can use Emmet here as well. I tag with the class of FAS FA-envelope, right, which will put the envelope here next to the button, and it'll, instead of submit, we'll put send, which makes more sense. Send the message. Save. And when I go back, you can see the send button with a blue envelope. Let's copy this button. And let's make a cancel button. So copy the button, paste it, and this will be the cancel button. For now, we're not going to need it. Later on, we will. The type will be reset. Instead of a button primary, which is the blue button, we'll say button warning, which is the yellow button. FAS FA, instead of envelope, we'll use undo. And if I want to make it larger, I can. I can change the class size to FA large. FA large actually makes the icon larger from Font Awesome. And instead of send here, we'll put cancel. So I changed the size class for both the send button and the cancel button now. So both of them are larger icons. And if I go back, you'll see that those are big icons. Starting to look good. Better, anyway. And that is my form. That's how my form is going to go. But I'm going to add more details here. right? So below the form and above the last div tag, I'm going to put in another button. And the way it's going to look, let's use some Emmet here. Div with the class of column-large-4 and column-medium-4, right? That means I want to use 4 columns for this one. Well, 4 plus, we said 6. 4 plus 6 is 10, which means leaves us 2 columns, 1 on either side for buffer. So 4. And what I want to do is I want to say that inside of that div tag, I want to put an anchor tag with an attribute of href, which points to contact list.html. This is Emmet. And I want to include a class of button, button-primary, button-large, okay, button-large. And if I press tab, then I get this. So let me show you that again. So I'll give you this link. I'll give you this thing. And I want you to try it out in your code, right? See how this works for you. So this is shorthand. This is Emmet, right? And to activate it, just retype the last character. Either click on the blue link that comes up or press tab, okay? And what this does is it has a div tag, and inside that div tag, there's an anchor tag. And what we're doing is we're using Bootstrap to color the anchor tag so that it looks like a button. And we want to put in between the anchor tag, inside the anchor tag, we want to put something like show contact list. All right, so it's going to be a button to take us to the contact list. And I want to put an I tag with a class of FAS and then FA-users, and I want to make that large again. And if I press tab, I can do that right there. And so what this does, again, I'm using Emmet to speed things up. And what this does here is it says, okay, I want to make another button. It's going to take us to the contact list.html. We don't have this yet. We're going to make that file right now. But when I go back to the code to see what it looks like this. Show contact list. So what is this crazy column large 4 and column large 6 thing happening? Well, it does this actually. And by the way, notice that this file has the extra little spaces that made Jacob crazy. We're going to take that out of here because that's just you guys.
I've been noticing that the entire time.
It's a crazy thing. Let's take it out. That's terrible. Let's take that top nav and make it go away. Let's change this to header. It's only you guys. And kill this class for the header, please. So it looks like this, finally. But what this means is if I was to make this smaller, like so, notice how this shows up. But if I make it even smaller still, then it kind of populates underneath. Take a look right here. And that is kind of ugly, right? Because this takes up 10, right? And this takes up 4, which is more than we have. We don't have enough to kind of populate this. As an example. So we have to modify those. Take a look what it does when you go into the different size class. So in order for us to make this look good, this is large, this is medium right here, right? And this is, as we go smaller and smaller, there's a spot where it doesn't look good. We can modify this as well. Okay, hopefully it didn't freeze too much. All right, so that's what that does. We didn't change anything.
Yeah,
that's weird.
So we didn't see what you were changing there.
I didn't change anything. All I showed.
You mentioned the size.
Yeah, all I was changing was this. So I was modifying the size so you can see what it looked like. So here's like large. Here is medium, and then what happens is
on like
now, even now.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so it doesn't like when I do that. I think. How about now?
When you resize the window, it seems like the entire screen capture just freezes before you start resizing.
Okay, well, we're done doing that now. So that's it. That's what it's doing.
I'm doing it on my own system, so I can see it.
Hey, that's great. Okay, let's move on. So that is that part, right? And we can see that that's what this form is, and our form is done, and we're ready to go to the next level. So I'm going to say control backtick, and let's go in here and clear, and we're going to go up one level, and we're going to go get add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added form to contact page. Okay, so that's done, and form is done. So that's one of the requirements in your in-class exercise lab report, which is this, right? I've actually posted this up on your in-class exercise 3. It includes version control, and it asked me to put together a contact list.html, which I'm going to do right now. Let's do it. So in order for me to make a new file, I want to copy an older one, which is the contact.html page we just used. So let's do that. So copy it and paste it, which is going to give me a copy of contact.html. Let's rename this, and we'll call this, and this is important, contact-list.html. And here is what you need to do, guys. You must change the title, because we're switching on title, to contact-list. Please do that. If you don't change the title, you won't be able to do the next steps properly. Okay, so that's done. And when we scroll down, it is exactly the contact page, but we don't really need it to be that. So in the nav link, which is the contact link, normally what happens is when we go to the contact page, you can see that the contact link is active. It's kind of highlighted in kind of a white. We don't want that for the contact page. We don't want it for this one. This should not be highlighted. So if we go back there, just remove the active class in your contact list page, remove it, and also remove the ARIA current page, only from your contact list page, not the contact page. Contact page stays as is. Down here where it says main container and contact us, we want to put in contact list. So this is the new thing we're going to build today. We want to remove everything from here except for the main tag. So in other words, just the h1 tag and the main tag and nothing else. Okay, this is where we're going to start. So what is this contact list we make? Well, what it is going to be a bunch of a list of contact objects we're going to create. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So let's start formatting this thing. I want to start with a div with the class of row. Inside of that, I want to have a div with the class of column. Inside of that, I want to have a button, oh yeah, baby, with an ID of add button. All right, actually, you know what? Let's not do the button. I think we'll do the button next week. Well, inside of that, we'll have a table. How about this? We'll have a table with a class of table and table-striped, table-bordered, and table-hover. Okay, so that's just a bunch of classes to create a table structure, right? And then inside of that, we'll have a table head with a class of table-dark. And inside of that, we'll have a table row. Inside of that, this is neat, we're going to have a table header, right, with a, and I want to have an attribute with a scope that is column, and I want 5 of those times 5. Let's take times 6, actually. Times 6. And then press that button, and you're going to get amazed, hopefully. Let's give you that code. Let's give you that code. I'll give you that code. I know, inside of this, inside of that's what I want.
It seems like it's going to take a lot of practice to just kind of intuitively do it.
You know what? If you learn Emmet, you will know CSS at the end. Because this is the same way of selecting elements in CSS. And if you learn Emmet, the dot class means exactly the same thing in CSS. The hashtag means ID. There's a lot of things that are the same. So notice here, I have a table head, and I've stopped here at this point, table head, right? Which is, I said, T head, and in the table head, I have a class of table dark. and then it's give me this thing. And if I press tab, right, or if I kind of complete it, it does this. Let's keep going. Let's add more to it. Let's go crazy. And what you can do with Emmet is you can use brackets like so. I can say, okay, I want to, next to the table head, I want to add in a table body. So I want to add a table body, right? And I want to add an ID of contact list. And now when I'm there, click it, guys. And now I have this. Show you that again.
Sorry, I just missed the very end of okay.
So contact list, and then notice the brackets, what they do is they separate things. Plus means next to. So greater than side means inside of, I want to make this, and next to that, I want to put a table body. I can use brackets around both of those two things if I want to. Example, if I want to say bracket, it'll say definitely put these things inside of that, and then I can continue. So then what happens is like this. The table itself has, the table node has a table head, and next to it, that's the plus, there's a table body. Okay? And this, my friends, down in here is where I want to put my contact information, right in here. That's where it's going to go.
I have the Emmet string written, but I've lost the little autocorrect telling me I can tab to actually create the HTML. Is there a way to get that back?
Close. So what you do is, if I undo, right? If you're here, you mean? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Just kill the last character, like the T and the list, and then when you type it again, it comes up. And when you click onto it, and we're in here now, right? Then what we have is a structure for us to use for our table. We need to make some changes here, though. We're not complete. So, because it would have been too difficult to put it in, I didn't want to confuse you more than I already did. So I wanted to use a class with a text center. And inside of where it says the table head, we want to put a hashtag. Hashtag means it's just a number that we're going to use here, not a hashtag like an ID. And here we're just going to enumerate the stuff we want, like full name. This is kind of our header row, as well as contact number. This is where it's all going to go. And email address. I've included a couple of additional spots that I'm not going to use this week, that I'm going to fill in next week because I want to do full CRUD, create, read, update, delete with front-end JavaScript and something called local storage, which we're going to be dealing with right now. Save. Save. What does this look like online? If I go back here, you're going to see this. So if I go to my contact page, I can click show contact list, and you're going to see this. Okay, are you with me? Check if you're with me, X if you're not. Problem.
My initial page looks really ugly, but the button that gets me to contact list works. So I guess I can fix that with the recording, right?
Yeah. I'm going to put this up on, actually you can fix it now because I'm going to put it up on GitHub. So you can always check my code against your code. So I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say added contact list page. Git push. And that, my friends, when I did this, if I go back to your lab report, it's right here. I just did this piece. So I did this piece. We're already doing this piece. So far 0.75%. Our contact form's done, 0.5%. And our contact list page, it's supposed to display a list of contacts. Ooh, this 0.5% is worth a lot. And the one piece you're going to do on your own today is this. You're going to replace the stuff that's inside of your live site, that whatever it is, .github.io, with the stuff that's inside of your in-class exercise 3. This is you to do. Well, we're going to work for the remainder of the class on this part right here. How do I display the stuff in my contact list? It's actually more complex than you think, but we're going to do it together. Let's do it. So now that we have our page, we have place to put stuff, I need to talk about the code. So we just did some structure, remember? Progressive enhancement, structure, presentation, and then behavior. Let's do the behavior now. So back into our app.js, we need to restructure a little bit. So here in our app.js, all we care about so far is my home page. I want to add functions for all of my pages now, okay? And we're not going to use them all today, right? I also want to, whenever I go to a page, I want to do a console log, let's say at the top somewhere, and the console log is going to say something like homepage, right? It's going to tell us where we're at. So we know we've made it to this function. It's a bit of debugging for now, okay? And so let's think about what all these pages are going to be called. So display home, let's make the functions, the empty functions first. I'm going to make another function called display about page. I'm going to make another function called display projects page for you guys. Actually, it should really be called products page. This should not be called projects. That's what you're supposed to do with code, right? It's supposed to be called products, right? In your lab 1, this is supposed to be called products, and you're supposed to change the link to say projects. Anyway, let's continue. And so this is like display the project page. We'll continue. Display the services page. And let's change it so it should say what it's supposed to say: projects, services, about, and contact. We're going to work in here today, as well as the new one, which we just made. No dashes. And I want to put some console logs. Just a moment. I know you guys are like, wait, he took off. It's okay. It's just functions that with the names of the pages, display, the name of the page, and page. And I want to put some console logs in there just to give us some code hinting or debugging that tells us where we're at. We're at the about page, about us page. We're at the projects page, right? And we're at the services page. We're at the contact us page. We're at the contact list page. Okay. And I think this is our projects and our services. Oh. So now that I have all the functions, this is nice. What we want is to modify our switch case. Switch case has to match with the name, the title of the page. We have to be very careful that we do that properly here. Let's do them all in order. So again, just like we said, case, about, and it's going to be about us. And how do I know? If I go to the about page, by the way, when we're here, let's do a quick fix on the header so we won't make Jacob crazy anymore, right? Bye-bye header. No one can know, okay? Keep it quiet. There we go, that's done. So it says about us, right? About us is something that it says, and that's what we have to go back into here, right? So it says about us, and we're gonna kind of do a shift tab to move it back so it's organized properly. And here we're gonna say display about page. So that way we can do this properly, okay? Let's do the next one. I'm gonna copy paste and we'll reformat after. Okay, so here, instead of about us, we're gonna go projects page, our projects. Our projects, there we go. And this will be the projects page, display projects page, right? And we can fix this. Well, again, we'll reformat, leave it like this for now. We'll reformat in a second. And let's check to see what it looks like. And we'll fix the main header, right? Because we don't want to make Jacob crazy. All right, shh. All right, we did it. And then we can check that it says our projects. Go back to app.js, there we go. Copy paste, don't worry about it even if it goes down again. If it's really ugly, don't worry about it, we'll fix it. And this will be our services, right? And this will be the services page. Check to see if it's right, fix the problem. Our services looks okay. And where I'm looking to say why it looks okay is I'm looking here in the title. Make sure this title matches what we're we're putting in there, right, to fix the problem. And again, go back to this, our services. So home, about, our projects, our services, right? And we'll do the contact list page, contact list, right? And this will be display contact list first. And finally, the contact page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. And then we'll reformat. Contact us. And reformat, the way reformatting works, you just highlight this area, switch, or you can highlight the entire code if you want. Right click and go format selection. It may ask you what formatter you want to use, like beautify or prettier or whatever, and you can do that. And it formats it nicely, so you don't have to worry about it. All right, so now that we did this, we should test it to make sure it all works properly and our pages made sense. Make sure there's nothing that needs to be saved here. And we go back, and then we can see that inside of our pages now, we don't have that issue. And let's look inside of our console to see that there is that contact list page. So home should say home page. About us should say about page, right? Projects should be our projects page, right? Services, our services page. And finally, contact us page. Why did I make you do it? It confirms that all those functions are active. We know we can access them all. And now all of those pages that had those issues are gone. We don't have to worry about those pages anymore. Awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, so that is a fix. And we also added in functions for all the pages. Let's do that, put that up on GitHub. So again, I'll say git add dot, git commit -m. I'll say added page functions. Git push. I know it's a short commit, but this way we know what it is and it keeps track of our things. Okay, so that's it. Page functions are added. Our code is now structured like everyone else. Everyone else had this already. And that's good. That's awesome. We've made all these pages. Where we want to work today is primarily here and here. We're going to start with this one first, with contact page. So in our contact page, I want to start thinking about what I want to do, how to hook into the stuff we already have, right? So that's going to be something that I want to work with. So first thing is, let's talk about it. So I want to say something like, okay, I'm in the contact page. Let's get a reference to that send button. I want to say, hey, send button. I want to get document.getElementById, and we're going to call this the send button. And if you don't remember what this is, or if you mistype this by accident, it will be bad for you. So let's make a split screen happen to confirm that that indeed is the send button. If we go to our contact page, that's the other way around. I meant to do our app here and our contact page here. There we go. And if you scroll down, you can clearly see that at the bottom of my form, there is a send button. And that's why I made a reference to it. Cool. Nice. All right, so that's what this is. We made a reference to it because what this allows us to do is do something with the button. When I click the button, I want something to happen, right? Next, I want to get a reference to the subscribe checkbox, the subscribe checkbox. And that's going to be the same thing. I want to say document, hey, document.getElementById, and I want to get that subscribe checkbox. I could have copy pasted, but I didn't. And then I want to say, hey, send button, let's add event listener. I want to add the click event, and I want to add an anonymous function that allows me to check to see when I kind of click on that button. I also want to check if my subscribe checkbox is checked. And if it is, do a console log that says checkbox checked. Okay, that's our display contact page so far. And wait, what? What is this? Subscribe checkbox checked. Checked is a state for a checkbox. subscribe checkbox says it's an HTML element that has a check state. Okay, how does it know? Well, let's go and check it. So if I go back to here, and if I go open up the inspector, and I go to console, and I try and send, it's going to go, man, sorry, you need to do some basic validation. Guys, in the lab report, it says you need some basic validation. This is it. This is your basic validation. So if I type in some stuff, Tom and a number, at least something in there, it'll work right now. It's not great validation, but it does something, right? And if I click, subscribe, and if I click send, here's the problem that I'm going to get. If I click send, it's going to reset the page. Watch. Whoop. Why? That's what form does. My submit kind of tries to send my data to the backend server. We have no backend server right now. So what it's actually doing is it's resetting the form because you've completed the requirements, which are put the stuff in the right way. We need to test this a little differently. So we need to prevent that default behavior. The way to do it, and you're going to get a warning, is I want you to put an event variable here in the function. And before the if checkbox is checked thing, I want you to do something called event prevent default. And what this does is it prevents the default behavior of any event. That's what it does. It prevents the default behavior of any event. So the default behavior of the submit button is to submit the form. It still does my click event, but it prevents the default behavior if there is one. Okay, so that's what it is. Now, you might get a deprecated thing. It's not deprecated. If you want to know what the prevent default is, just to give you some sense of it, let's go and look it up. So if I go to JavaScript prevent default, it's going to take us to our developer mozilla.org, right? And what it's going to, this is an official site, 2021, and it shows us exactly what I'm telling you here. So here's the syntax, event prevent default, right? And the way it's used is inside of an event listener, you can do an event prevent default, just like this. Okay, here's the event parameter, here's the event prevent default. So this is where Visual Studio Code is telling you something's not right, but actually it's okay. So how does this work for us? So if I go back to here now, and if I press send, it's not going to do validation anymore. It turns off validation. We want to turn this on back later, or turn this back on later. So let's do some stuff. If I do Tom and I do numbers, I don't have to, right? Tom at example.com, like I said before, and some hello, and I click the subscribe checkbox and click send. It tells us the checkbox was checked. Yay, we know this works. That's what I wanted. Awesome. Let's go back to that code. So it's just for us, it's for debugging purposes for now. Later on, we're going to use it for validation. Okay, so we're going to use it for debugging. We're going to turn it on and then turn it off. So what I want to do here is I want to make a new contact. Every time the person checks the checkbox, we're going to store the contact in something called local storage. So we're going to make a contact first. We're going to say that, hey, contact, I want to make a new contact, and I need the name of the person. Well, let's use this. Let's use full name dot value. Let's use contact number dot value, and let's use email address dot value. And now you should ask me the question that's like, Tom, what the heck is going on? Because there is no full name anywhere in our code. And the answer is, you're right, there isn't. But there is. Where is this full name, contact number, and email address coming from? Where is it coming from?
NIP of the form box out.
The name of the form, that's where it's coming from. So if I save this now, save, and I spit out the toString method, the contact toString in the console, then when I go here and type in some stuff, whatever I type in should, because I'm preventing default behavior, right, should print out here. If I click this button, send, well, we should get something that looks like this. So console is not a function. What did I do wrong? Console log. Tom, sent. Tom, click, sent. See, it says Tom. Tom 416, T416, Tom at sent. It'll keep doing it over and over again. I can keep adding, and it'll keep on adding whatever I put in there, and it won't reset my form anymore, right? Because that's what prevent default does. Okay, but it actually outputs what I did.
Excuse me, sir, I have a question here.
Yeah.
Yesterday we were doing this, right? And you said printing on the console is not good. So didn't we already prevent this?
We're not gonna print on the console. It's just for our debugging purposes. That's what we're doing. We're just debugging right now. So you're right. We're not going to use the console out. We're going to use it right now just temporarily, and then we're going to take it away. Sam says my event word is X'd out by Visual Studio. I told you it's going to say something like deprecated. Don't worry, leave it in there. Okay. All right.
I was having a quick issue with mine too. Just like basically, the console log isn't actually displaying. Can I just quickly see the display content page again quickly? Just like the code of it, just make sure that I'm right.
Yeah. Okay. So that is.
I see it. Yeah, I fixed it. We're good.
Okay, no problem. So this is good. But what I want to do is I want to use something called local storage. I want to store my context somewhere on local storage. How does local storage work? First of all, where is local storage? In everybody's browser, in the application tab in here, you can have some local storage. Notice I stored some data in here already today. I can delete it. But one thing that companies can do is they can store data in the form of key value pairs, basically a dictionary, without you knowing, inside of the local storage area of your browser. It's not a cookie, it's local storage, right? So that's something that I want to put that in there for you.
Is this lost once the session's over?
Nope. Yeah. Session storage is different. Session storage has a time limit. It's very similar to local storage in that it has key value pairs, but it times out after a week, a day, whatever you set up. Okay? But that's, again, up to the user. If the user or the programmer wants to set this up for a month, it's going to last for a month. Okay? And a lot of times we use session storage or local storage for things like our shopping cart. You come back and the shopping cart, it remembers who you are, and it has the shopping cart with all your stuff in here. And every time you come back, it's still there until you're done, right? Especially if it's a site that doesn't have a really great back end. Let's say a local store. If it's Amazon, it's different. But if it's something else, if you're buying something from another local site, I'm telling you, it's being stored either in local storage or in session storage.
I'm assuming.
Yep. So this is good. So, but I'm just telling you, security warning, this is something that we're going to use today, but it's something that they have control. There's also WebSQL as well as IndexedDB. They exist, and cookies, of course. And even now we have a cookie that's active because of our light server. Okay. So that's the stuff that we can look at. So application storage, which is in our local storage, is where we're going to store our data. How do I store my data? How do I access local storage? How do I do that? Well, it looks like this. I can say, hey, local storage, I want to set item. Set item gives me key value pairs. I can select a unique key. The key must be unique. So example might be like, test 1, right? And then I can kind of put in the data. This is my test. All the data is a string, no matter what you do. So if I press save, if I come back to the contact page, then test 1 is here, and this is my test is here. But if I refresh the page, it doesn't add another one. Why? Because the key is not unique. The key is not unique. In fact, if anything, it overwrites this key and puts in this data again. That's what it does. However, if I do it again, let's do this second local storage item, right? Try it out for yourself so you know what I'm talking about. Let's put in test 2, right? just to give you a sense of it. And if I go, now you can see I have both items, test 1 and test 2, two different items. Here's how you can erase it. You can delete it here by deleting it, and here. But if I refresh the page, they're back. And that's how they keep track of stuff on your page. They can track you. I told you, there's a lot of stuff they can do. All right, so that's what this does. How about if I want to, let's delete this. How about if I want to delete an item? Well, I can just do the same thing. I say local storage dot remove item, and I can remove test 1. And if I did that, then you'll see that it's there and gone. What about if I wanted to retrieve data? Well, I can say something like the console log and local storage dot get item, and we want to print out test 1, the key related to the value, right? And then I can save that, and it will set item, get it, and then delete it. And then if I did that and go back to my console, you can see that this is my test is there.
Since they're all these strings, we don't need to format them or anything.
We don't care about the format yet, no. So that's good. And the last thing that local storage is really great for is, hey, local storage, what is your length, right? It can tell me how many keys there are. So console log, length. Okay, just really quickly. And you can see that this should be 0 now because I've removed everything. So my console log length is 0. But if I kind of comment out the remove item, then you can see that my length is 1. And in my application, sure enough, there is an item. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. Okay, so really quick and dirty on what local storage is. So this is neat. Local storage is awesome. And I wanted to talk about it because this is an opportunity for us to store our data, our contact in local storage. But my problem is, how do we store it? And if we do, how do I retrieve it? It's going to be stored as a string, cool, but I need to get it out of there again and display it in my contact list page. So now we talk about formatting. And I'm thinking about how to format. I'm thinking comma separated format. I'm thinking something called serialization. I want to encode my contact or serialize it. I want to store it in local storage. And then I want to come later on in another page after I've reloaded, whatever, and I want to deserialize that piece of code. And I want to decode it. I want to take a look at the comma separated values. And I want to take those values and put them into the properties of my contact. So that's called serializing and deserializing, or encoding and decoding. Let's do it. But we can't do it like this, right? We need a mechanism for this. And I'm going to put that inside of my contact class. So let's remove that little console log and go up to my class, which is my contact.js. And down, 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 just before my toString method, I want to put another area where we have some public utility methods for my class. Here's where we're going to add some in. The first one is called Serialize. We don't have anything there yet. We're going to add it in. I'm going to show you how to do it. And we're also going to have a deserialize method. And deserialize is going to take a piece of data, right? Because we need to get data and put it in here. In order for me to do deserializing, to load this full of stuff, I need to be able to create an empty contact, which I cannot do right now because my constructor requires full name, contact number, and email address. Let's make those things optional. To do that in JavaScript, we just need to put an equal sign and some value, like so. So now I can choose to make a contact.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I can make a contact that is empty, right? So it doesn't have, like, the constructor is now allowing me to create a contact object with no properties in the constructor function, or optional properties. Take a look. That's what the question mark means. Because of assigned default value. So this is JavaScript's way of doing it, which is pretty neat. Okay. So now we need to check to see that it's not this in order for me to serialize. I can't serialize stuff when I don't have any values. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So in my serialize method, then I want to start thinking about how I'm going to check for that value. And I'm going to use that triple equal thing that I talked about last time. But instead of triple equal, I'm going to do it not exactly equals. So it's going to look like this. If this dot full name is not exactly equal to empty, so it's not going to be empty, and this dot, all of them can't be empty, right? And this dot contact number is not exactly equal to an empty object, and all these have to be true, right? This dot email address is not exactly empty to an empty string. Well, then and only then do I want to return a template string where I inject this dot full name followed by a comma, and then inject this dot contact number followed by a comma, and this dot email address. So that is my serialization. I'm comma separating. I'm creating a comma separated string, and I'm returning that out of Serialize. Really, Serialize now returns a string type. I have a string type. But what about if it's not this? I want to throw an error. And I can do that by saying, well, if I get to this point, I want you to throw a console error. Notice that console has console log, console error, console warn, console info, and console assert. We've only been using log, but error actually makes it red, warning makes it yellow, info makes it blue, and so on. And actually has other effects. Error will actually stop my JavaScript from working, which is what I want, right? I want JavaScript to stop working because someone did something wrong. So one or more properties of the contact object are missing or invalid, we'll put in, okay? And what we want to do is we want to return a null. Okay, now you should be screaming at this point. You're like, wait, what? This is where you love and hate JavaScript, right? Because you're like, wait, you returned a string. That's the return type. Methods can't have more than one return type, right? In JavaScript, they can. Just like in Python. In JavaScript, I can return a string or a null value. Those are two different types. And so I can do this in JavaScript. It makes it super, super flexible, but it also can make it confusing at times. But we're going to use this to our advantage, okay? So that's the serialize function. Next, let's make some assumptions because we can't fix this problem right now. We have no time. We're going to assume that, and that's the bad word, we're going to assume that the data is in a comma separated format. That's what we're going to assume, right? And it's basically a string list of properties. That's what it's going to be. Okay, that's what data is. We're going to assume that it's a string list or an array of strings. How about that? An array of strings, right? Or a string array. How about that? We just call it string array of properties. I'm going a little bit crazy here, but I want you to understand what this means. String array of properties. And what I'm saying here is let's make a temporary variable called property array. And the way we're going to get our property array is we're going to assume that data is a comma separated string, and we're going to use data as a string. We're going to use JavaScript's split function. Split takes a string and it searches for a separator. We're going to use a comma, and what it does is it creates substrings, or it returns an array of substrings and stores it here in our property array. Assuming that it is comma separated. We don't know. We're hoping that someone used the serialize method to create the item in local storage, but who knows, right? And let's go into this dot full name then. We can assign to our property array 0, and we can go with the next one and the next one. Any questions around this? Why I chose to do it this way? This is not the only way you can do it, right? But this, to me, was the easiest way when I thought about it. Remember, my motto is make it work, right? And then refactor. Okay, so two functions, serialize and deserialize. One function is an output. The other function is an input. Notice that it returns void, right? Whereas the serialize function returns a string, okay? In fact, it actually returns a string or null. That's what it does return. But this one returns only void because it modifies. This is a mutator, and this is kind of like an accessor in different ways. All right, so this is cool. I like this. Let's put this up on GitHub before we do anything with it. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added serialize and deserialize methods to contact class. Kind of a bigger commit message. I don't like those, but it is what it is. Questions so far? Because we need to, are you with me? First of all, check mark if you're with me, if you get what I'm doing, or if you're lost, you don't really understand why I'm doing it, please, this is the time to figure it out with me. Cameron?
I got a question.
Yeah, go.
Should you have a semicolon on line 57? I just noticed that.
Did I miss it?
Oh, just about at that.
Yes, I should. I absolutely should. Darn it.
Okay.
Does JavaScript need it? No, it doesn't. No, doesn't need it, even if you're being strict. It doesn't need it anyway. We want to put it because we're developers. But otherwise, even if we put a use strict, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Should we? Yes, we absolutely should for us because it makes it, it delineates each of our commands, right? But does it need it? No, it does not. Just FYI, right? So which is good and bad. It's good because our code will run, bad because we can make these inconsistent, typings. All right, cool. So this is all we need from the contact class. Let's move on back to the app.js now. So now that we've done that, we're ready to go with the next thing that we want to do. And I'm talking about this because I want to make sure that you're clear on what we need to do here. So in the contact page, we've done this add event listener. We've created a contact, and now we want to store it. Let's do the storage. Well, first we'll check, hey, can I serialize this thing? Can I contact, if contact.serialize, is it serializable? That's what basically it does. If it returns a string, then we're good. If it returns null, it'll skip this, okay? And then it'll actually throw an error too. Let key, we'll make a new value. Key is equal to contact.fullname. Okay, I want to pull this up for you guys. Dot substring. I want to make a new unique key with the substring. And the substring goes, it tells me the beginning of the string and the end of it, but not including the end. So exclusive, not inclusive, right? So the first character is what I'm getting of the full name, plus the date.now, which is a value of milliseconds from January 1st, 1970. A number of milliseconds that have elapsed since January 1st of 1970. That's what that is, okay? And so it gives me a random value. And then what I want to do is I say, hey, local storage, I want you to set item, the key that I just made, and I want you to store in there contact.serialize, which is going to store my contact in a comma separated format. Okay, let's see if this works, right? This part right here. And let's see if you agree. Would you do it differently? Going back to here, I'm going to go and type in some stuff, Tom, and then my number, and then Tom at, and my message, because my message gets lost because we don't care about it. And I go to subscribe and click send, and there it is. So here's T, which is the first character of my full name, the number of milliseconds that have elapsed since January 1st, 1970, as well as my comma separated values for my contact. That's how it works. So that's my unique identifier. That's why I made this, because we need a unique key. If we don't have a unique key, what ends up happening is it won't work properly. By the way, there's other ways of getting a unique key. We'll talk about that later. I made one here, but we're going to make another one. Okay, are you with me? Do you get what I did here? So again, first to check to see if it's a serializable thing. Can I serialize? Which means, do I have data in my contact? That's what it means. If I have data in my contact, then let's store it. Otherwise, skip it. It won't even do it properly. So this fixes my validation issue in some ways. Okay. Display contact page. What was that? I guess not. It's a lot. All right, so I know, isn't that?
Billion is a big number.
We have, listen, guys, we are, small potatoes in the universe. Okay, let's continue. So now that we've done this, let's fix my display contact list page. We have the contact list page, right, which is here, but we want to inject our data between here somehow, right? We want to deserialize it from the local storage, use some kind of for loop, and inject each of the items inside of here as a kind of an injectable row, or what we like to call a repeatable region. Repeatable row is what we're going to make, right? So how do we do that? So I'm going to go back to my app.js, and let's code now my display contact list. Again, this is only going to work in the contact list method, contact list page. So how does this work? So first things first, what we want to do is check to see, do we have anything in my local storage? Local storage, how about the length? Is it greater than 0? If it's greater than 0, then we're good to go. If not, skip all this. Let me make a reference to my contact list, which is actually, hey document, I want to get element by ID contact list. And I just showed you this. This thing here is in my contact list page. It's right here. That's what I'm doing. Okay. So that's what my app JS does inside on line 88. It says get a reference. I need to hook into or get a reference to the area that I want to inject my contacts. That's what I'm doing. Okay. Next, I want to let data equal to an empty string. So this is our data container, right? Where we're going to add add a row or add a set of data, or the data, that, or we'll call it deserialized data from local storage. That's what we're going to do. We're going to add inside this data container. Right now it's a string. Remember, we get strings, and we're going to just inject it in here. That's what we're using it for. Next, let's set up some keys on the page. How many keys do we have in local storage? Well, to enumerate those, we need to use a special function called the object from the object class. Remember, the object class is a super duper class of all classes. There is a special function called keys, believe it or not, or method. And what keys does is it enumerates all the keys in a map or a dictionary. That's what it does. So you say, hey, keys, I want you to take a look at local storage. And what keys does is it returns a string array and stores it inside of the keys variable. A string array of all the unique keys that I've made. The first initial plus all the milliseconds from 1970, those keys. All right, and so this is returns a string array of keys. That's what it does, okay? And stores it there. And then I want to set up a simple index or counter, right? Counts how many keys, right? For each key, right? And then I'm going to do a for loop. There's different for loops I can use. I can use the standard for loop like this. I don't recommend it because I want to count each element. And that means for each. There's also a for each loop. But the for each loop is ugly. I don't like it. The better loop to use that I recommend is a for of. The for of looks like this. For of, and instead of iterator, we're going to call this key of keys. And the way you read it is like this. For every key in the keys array or collection.
This one actually looks like
loop.
some of the formulas we've done before stuff.
Exactly. That's
right.
why, and that's why I'm giving it to you, right? Because I think this is a better way to do it. Yeah, it's again very similar. I'm showing you this because now, I mean, I'm trying to give you implicit learning, right? Which means instead of explicitly telling you the syntax from the very first day, we're doing it just in time, which is enough for you guys because you have a background in programming, and I don't have to sit there and go, this is a loop, this is a variable, this is boring. Okay, let's move on. So then we're going to do something like let contact data, you can call this whatever you want, is equal to localStorage.getItem, and we're going to get the key that we're currently looking at, the first key in the list of keys. Okay, and we're storing this, so this is get local storage data value, related to the key. And this is the comma separated data value, right? That's what it is. We're storing it in contact data. And then we want to create a new contact. We're going to say, hey, contact, let's make a new empty contact. We can do that now, right? So create a new empty contact object that we can use to serialize and deserialize. And we're going to do exactly that. We're going to say contact.deserialize, and we're going to deserialize the contact data that we got from local storage. So now this contact object has everything from local storage set up properly, as in, the contact full name, contact number, contact email address. We have all that in here now. Okay, now this is what is the best part of it all. Hey data. Remember this stuff up here? We made a string. I want you to add to that string a template string. A template string that looks like the following. Here's the template string. I want a table row, a repeatable region, all right? And I want to add in a table header with the scope of row like we've seen before, okay? And I want to add a class, a bootstrap class of text center. And I want to inject the index that we currently are at in the first header. That's what we're going to put in there. Then I want to use table data, and I want to inject the contact object and the full name related to it in here, followed by, and this is a beautiful thing, guys, the contact number and the email address. And I also want a couple of additional spaces because next week we're going to have a surprise, and I'm going to do full CRUD, create, read, update, delete with my local storage. Yay. This is the repeatable region. We're going to inject a repeatable row into the contact list. Awesome. To complete this, we need at the bottom of the for loop to increment the index, index plus plus. You could also call this count plus plus, whatever you want. And then at the bottom, after the for loop, we're going to say, hey, contact lists. You know that inner HTML stuff? Let's replace it with our data. And that, my friends, is how we're going to use our contact list. Are you with me? Check mark if you know what happened, if you can read the code and understand what's happening. X if you're unclear or you don't know a thing about what I just did.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's a lot of really cool stuff. There's a lot of things. Now, this is where I'm taking you to the next level. Remember I told you about this course ramps? Here's the starting. We're at the beginning of the ramp, the bottom of the ramp, guys, right now. 105. I know. So what is this? So can I explain line 105 is the question. So data, okay, so I created an empty, basically a string variable that only holds an empty string. So it's a string variable. And then I did a plus equals. Plus equals is a shorthand for data is equal to data plus this template string. That's what it is. And so what I'm doing is I'm concatenating this template string that I created with the current data that's up here, right? This, which is empty right now. And then I'm using a template string. The backtick character, remember I talked about this earlier, is a special character in HTML5 that is the template string, right? And then we inject everything in there, okay? Let's see how it works. So right now, if I go back to this and I go to show contact page, there's nothing because we have nothing inside of our application. But what if we start adding stuff in? And by the way, let's take away our, before we get there, because I want to put this up, let's take away our debugging, please. So we'll get rid of the event and we will remove this altogether, right? That's our debugging piece. We're not going to prevent default behavior anymore, okay? So I'm taking it out of the display contact page. And now when I go back here, it's going to reset, but who cares? So let's start entering some data. Here's Peter Parker, like we had before. Let's say his number is 416-555-5555. His email address is spiderman@example.com. And his message is webheads, right? And then we want to subscribe him to our list and click send. And there he is, Peter Parker. If I click show contact list, hey, this is where he is now. That's what you should get. Let's go back to the contact list. Okay, we're going to get back to that. Hold on. I'll tell you why. There's lots of reasons why it could happen. Here's the next one. Let's go Stephen Strange. So are you getting this first? Are you getting the key value pairs added here in the application? Yes or no? Stephen Strange. That's the first part. And my contact number for Stephen Strange is 416-555-5556. And his email address is drstrange@example.com. And his message is by the hoary hosts of Hoggoth. I'm a Dr. Strange fan for many, many years. And click subscribe to our contact list and send. And then Stephen Strange. And if I go back to my contact list, we see both entries. But this is weird. What's happened? How come Stephen Strange and is first and Peter Parker is second? Let's add one more and see what happens now. Contact list, go back to full name and add another superhero, right? So let's say Steve Rogers. I can do this all day. Steve Rogers, right? And 416-555. Was that? Yeah, exactly. 555-5557. And it's Captain America for me all the time at example.com. And I can do this all day. Right? And subscribe, send, and then there we go. That's good. So now we've got Peter Parker. And then let's go to show contact list and bam. Stephen Strange, Peter Parker, and Steve Rogers in a weird order. Look, that should be second. And so what's happening here? Why did it do this? It really depends on how the keys are formatted, okay? And it really depends on how the browser feels like it. Here's the answer. The way it enumerates the keys is really up to the browser, and it's going to not be in alphabetical order because we haven't asked it to sort anything. We didn't sort anything at all. All we've done is we've enumerated it and we've added it into the list. And we keep adding it into the list every single time. So when we do a for each loop, right? It's going through the list the way it wants to go through it, not the way we see it here. Just FYI. If you have nothing in your key value, then something is wrong. Let's take a look at the code before we get here. First, I'm going to put this up on GitHub so you can compare your code with my code. Let's do that first. So going back to here, I'm going to put that in play, and I'm going to say control backtick, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say completed contact list functionality. Instead of the contact list functionality, we just use contact list functionality and git push. All right, so this is all you need minus your putting it up live for your in-class exercise 3, but let's talk about some issues. So again, places where things can go wrong. Like I said, first thing to note is, are we getting values here? If you're not getting values here, then you won't get values here. Okay, that's number one. And the way values are put there is here, inside of my display contact page. This is where values are being added. So make sure this is the same as mine. Okay, so make sure you can do this first. If you can't add stuff to your contact page, then you won't have anything in your storage. And make sure that this is correct, because this has got to be a unique key that doesn't overwrite itself. If you made your own and it's not unique, it'll never store more than one value ever. So that's the first part. The second part is some of this stuff where you inject. I believe that this is going to be very similar. So I recommend checking your code with my code, because this is a lot of little pieces, and it's the same. It's the best thing to do. So again, go to github.com/Durham Programmer and go into section 1, go into in-class exercise 3, go into the script, start looking there, look in the app.js and compare your code to my code. That's where I would start looking. So I'm going to give you that link to help you out. Okay. And then after this, if you wait for people who want me to help you solve your problem, hook back after class. And what I'll do is I will stop recording on YouTube. I'll go through the stuff to stop the class, and then we can go through it together and I'll show you how to fix it. But let's see who's with me. Who's got it working? Check mark if you got it working, X if you don't. So Jacob got it working, Zoe you didn't. It's okay, we're gonna fix you. David, Dakota, no. Again, I'm telling you, it's like minor errors that are stopping you from doing it. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording now and we're going to go through it. But before we do that, let's do this, guys. So again, keep in mind the stuff that's due. Test 1, again, another reminder, due Saturday at midnight. Next week, we're going to do an intro to jQuery, and we're going to also give you all the details, a lab report. I'm going to write a lab report up, which is the rubric for lab 1. That's what's happening, okay? The lab report for this exercise, right? Again, version control, site structure, just adding a contact list and a button on the contact page, a contact form that's fully working and does basic validation, which means you cannot disable default behavior. We have to take that away. That's only for debugging purposes that we did. Contact list page, the contact list page actually displays a list of contacts. It's implicit here that your JavaScript is functional for you to do this. And then finally, the you do part, which is copy your in-class exercise files. And that means if you go up online, that means I'm not going to do it with you right now, but go into your files, let's say in-class exercise 3, copy all this and dump it into your, whatever the name of your account is, .github.io. Just don't kill the Git repository and dump everything in here. You can also probably avoid node modules because we haven't really changed anything so far, and just copy the rest in here. And then push this to GitHub and it'll redeploy. Okay, so that is your bottom piece, which is worth only 0.25%. Okay, that's what's happening there. All right, so that's what's due.
Avoid the .git, right? That's what you said? Avoid the .git, don't copy over that?
Don't destroy it, is what I'm saying. Yeah, because that .git is the thing that's going to keep track of your commits, and you don't need to destroy that part. Okay, so I've got a few people that have issues. I'm going to stop recording here, but I want to say thank you so much for joining me, for the people that are here. For for those people who need help, hang back. And again, I will assist you to make sure your site works the way it's supposed to. And then for those people who are good to go, see you next week on Wednesday. Again, make sure you do your test if you haven't done it already, and submit your in-class exercise 3, which is due tonight at midnight. Okay. Otherwise, I'll stop the recording on YouTube, and we'll go from here.
Well, since I've got everything working, thank you for class phone.
Hey, thanks a lot.
I thought this one was actually